relax, free of complications. So, hi everyone. If you're on Facebook, you're technically a minute early. I always allow a little extra time, and we didn't need it. So, let's hope the internet gods continue to cooperate. Hang tight. We will be with you in our conversation shortly. If you are joining us on the live cast and you'd like to give a shout out about where you're from, please go ahead and do that in the chat. And meanwhile, while we're waiting for folks to find us, I'm just going to take a quick minute to bounce us over to the pages, and I'm super excited to get talking with our guests today. So, Ayanna, what's your weather like in Massachusetts?
Actually, today was pretty nice. It was felt a little springy. The sun was out, it was like 40
I
maybe.
went for a walk before I got on with you. It was one of my first
Oh,
walks I've taken in a while. So,
nice.
uh, and then I was crossing paths with somebody because I'm here in Ohio, and this time of year, you
Yeah,
don't
what's it like there?
you don't know what weather you're often getting one day to the next. We're kind of coming up on that season where it could be 70 one day and freezing and 20 the next day. So yeah, we got hit pretty hard with the snow and whatnot. But yes, now we had one spring day, but who knows how long that's going to last.
Right.
All right. All right, my friends. So I'll still
Okay.
give people another minute or so to find us since we were on early, and I do realize that a lot of folks catch this later on the recording. So great. Well, I am delighted to have you with us. So my guest today is Ayanna Parrent, who is joining us from Cape Cod, Massachusetts. So tell us what you do in the world.
Besides yoga,
Yeah, I
I
love
do
that.
a lot of yoga.
I do
Yeah.
love about you.
No, so I'm the owner and founder of Be Free Coaching and Wellness. And it was a small business that I started a couple years back, and we just launched our new nonprofit so that we could serve a larger audience of folks that couldn't access wellness services. So I am the CEO and founder of that. So I currently run that on Cape Cod and Harwichport. That's my main gig.
Mhm.
I also work part-time in a school. I also do consultations with agencies around diversity and equity services. I do a lot of speaking engagements on recovery and mindfulness and movement. I love to dance and I love to do yoga. I could do yoga all day long. I love to meditate.
Yeah.
I do that too.
How marvelous. Well,
Yeah.
I think what caught my ear, well, two things caught my ear. One is we have a lot of similar interests. I'm also a yoga instructor, dance teacher. It's just so knitted into everything that I do. I mean, life is yoga. And then obviously we'll be talking about the recovery mission here. The second thing that really caught my attention is this nonprofit, because I'm also all about how do we make these practices more accessible to
That was, yeah.
who need them the most. So yeah, what are you doing with the nonprofit? That's
Yeah, so that was like the thing. It was so I developed, so Be Free stands for Find, Recover, Evolve, and Enjoy. And so that's sort of like the standard. And what I did was when I was actually in rehab, I designed a coaching model that infused yoga. And so I'm a licensed independent clinical social worker as my main sort of training. And I was finding, particularly for myself, that the only thing that really helped my recovery, so I was an active alcoholic, very much in recovery now, but the only thing that was really helping me was the movement and the mindfulness and the yoga. Like it was, I could have relapsed 1,000 times and gone to AA and all those things. I'm diving right into it. Sorry. Okay. So I just discovered that, my God, there's this tool that no one's using, and they're not infusing it in a way that's just so important. So I was like, let's combine the therapy model,
mm-hmm.
um, and the clinical model and the yoga model and the mindfulness model together.
Mm-hmm.
And I just done research, and there wasn't one out there. So I was like, I'm just going to design one
Mhm.
and teach people how to do it. So, but what I was finding as a small business was that because it was my model, because it was a consultation model, because it was private pay. It's hard to get insurances to pay for something so specialized like that. Um, so I was like, let's go nonprofit and just serve as many people as we can, because that's really the mission, is to have everyone
Mhm.
understand how important movement and mindfulness, because we're all recovering from something, whether it's food addiction, whether it's smoking, whether everyone
Mhm.
uses some kind of something to
Right.
heal, or they think they're healing, whatever it is that's ailing them from past trauma. But all about trauma, but like child abuse, all that stuff, if we don't use healthy tools, we're going to reach towards something else. So um, I figured, why not just dive in? I mean, it's a big thing going nonprofit, because I don't know that people understand how many like meetings and all the nuances of like,
A lot of red tape.
the bylaws and all these things that go into it. It's such an integral. Honestly, I thought people were like, running a small business is hard. I'm like, oh my god, that was nothing compared to this.
Yeah.
But I'm really excited, because I think that if I can develop a model that's, can really go to like rehabs and can go to hospitals, and where everyone can just get it through the grant funds that we have, and we don't have to worry about,
Right.
people having the money or not. It's like everyone deserves this, so why not just give them access?
Yeah,
If
and one of the ways I have gone through the back door with it for a lot of years, because I feel very strongly about this concept of needing to change the zip code of yoga. My friend Kitsuki Hawk and teacher taught me that, because I think in the United States, yoga's become such a boutique, middle to upper middle class thing that is just very inaccessible. And I say thing because it's more of a commodity than a practice as it's intended to be. And like one of the pieces of work I have done, and I've really had to fight my licensing boards and accreditation boards on this, is a program I do now called Yoga for Clinicians, where I teach clinicians with a yoga practice how to integrate it into their clinical practice where they are billing for insurance and kind of justifying it under counseling terms, but really being inspired by what yoga practice can, how just it, like you said, don't you want to do it? I mean, I think we are yoga. It's not
right,
anything we do.
right, the human body is yoga.
Yeah, how could you not infuse it?
Right.
So you are here. I mean, I've just been delighted to get. I've been wanting to get a chance to talk to you in one of these formats because our good common friend, Dr. Damon Silas, I think connected us on social media through his love of dance, and that's a
Yeah.
something all three of us have in common. So yeah, I've seen you in my Trauma on the 12 Steps networking group, and you have a recovery memoir out now called Becoming Free.
I do.
So
It came
congratulations.
out. It's wild. I'm an author. What?
I know it's the first time, especially. It's like woohoo!
I
So,
know. It's
so
crazy.
congratulations on that release. And yeah, if you would share with us just a little bit about your recovery journey and what of that shows up in the book.
Yeah. So without telling you the whole story, because it is, a memoir, so
Right.
I'll give you little snippets
Long
of it.
story.
No, I'm just kidding. So, my mom was she's passed away now, but she, was a pretty sick addict with, drugs, alcohol, the whole thing. She was homeless. She was out of my life for about 10 years. She would show up, she wouldn't show up. And as a kid, sort of the basis of the book was how that kind of represents trauma in my life and abandonment issues and my connection with people, and, was I loved, wasn't I loved? And so that's sort of the premise. And then it goes, there's different stories that shows up, and then sort of references my stepmother and my dad and my brother, and my husband and my daughter, and my daughter's adopted, and her all that whole journey with DCF, and how I managed the addiction and then getting in recovery while we were adopting her. There's a lot in there.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the backstory. But there's so many pieces in there. And then the ending is really just talking about be free, in terms of how I finally found mindfulness and movement to really create this model, which is now my life of becoming free, and then teaching other people on how to do it. So the second book actually will be sort of framed around the actual, elements of the coaching model and how to do it on your own, and just and live a free life. So
Say again
I
what
was,
the acronym
yeah.
FREE stands for. FREE.
What's that? Oh, find, recover, evolve, and enjoy.
I like it. Yeah, I like it very much. So you told me prior to our interview that you primarily practice the refuge recovery path. Yep.
Yes.
So tell me what that's like for you.
Yeah. So I did try all these things. So I was in rehab twice.
Mhm.
And I did, you know, when they discharge you and they're like, you know, go to AA and then get a sponsor and all this kind of stuff. Which works for some people and some people love it and like they live by it. And, you know, what I was finding was that there was a lot happening in the rooms and some people were sicker than others and being really energy based that it was hard for me to sit in those rooms and I wasn't feeling healing and I wasn't getting sort of what I needed, which the mindfulness just gave me more of. So, yeah, what was your question? I totally lost it.
About refuge recovery and maybe.
Oh, so that's how I got to refuge recovery. So finally I was like, wait, what she asked? So finally, I found refuge recovery and I just stumbled on the book and when I opened my studio, I was like, we got to have that here. And so now we have it once a week and it's just, it's so nice. So the format of it is like, you don't have to necessarily identify as anything other than you're in recovery. And we do, you know, a 20-minute meditation and then we read a chapter from the book. And it's really just Buddhist principles and talk about mindfulness and Buddhist principles in terms of recovery, and how we would use that. So the meditation is, you know, there's a topic. So there's like loving kindness meditation, forgiveness meditation, and then the chapter is related to that topic. And then we open it up for the discussion. So it's
Yeah.
just a nice format.
Yeah, I'm a fan of the program, and it's one of the ones that's inspired me. I do two recovery meetings here online. One is a yoga women recovery meeting Monday nights, and then we do our meditation satsang, my sponsor and I, on Thursdays. And we draw from many different models and kind of
Yeah.
that we put together. And I know Refuge and Recovery Dharma and a lot of the other Buddhist paths have definitely been inspirations and what we've put together. Because I just think, and I'm so with you, Ayanna, that I think the sooner you can expose people in recovery to mindfulness, yoga, meditation, befriending the body, befriending the
Right.
breath, befriending our
Friending is such
minds.
a great word.
Yeah, it's I just can't say enough of it. I can't even really put
Yeah.
words to it. And so I think however it's being incorporated, whether it's through formal models or informal means, there it's never too early. Because for me, so much of what addiction is about, right, is disconnection from the body. And I know so
Right.
much of my addiction journey was just an outflow of natural childhood dissociation I developed in response to overwhelming stress. And I was so used to kind of escaping my mind, escaping my body, checking out. And then when chemicals were introduced, it was just an easy accelerant to all of
Right.
that. And
Yeah.
so when I got sober, primarily using a 12-step path, and I was so fortunate to have a trauma focused sponsor. So, I mean, I got it better. I got
I think that makes a really huge difference.
so I got the 12 steps better than a lot of people did, which is why I think I've stayed optimistic to them.
Yeah.
Yet a few years in, I clearly needed to get outside help because I was still dissociating very intently. I was still
Mhm.
disconnected from my body very intently. So I was just so fortunate that I did get paired then with a therapist who was the one that ended up exposing me to this entire world that we're talking about now. So I like to ask any fellow mindfulness yoga teacher,
Yeah.
what does mindfulness mean to you? If you had to define it or describe it to your students based on your lived experience, how would you define it?
Oh, what a great question. So it's evolved over time.
Let's hear.
I used to be like, oh, it's just meditation and you sit and you be quiet and you become aware of shit. Like, oh, sorry. Stuff. Um, um, Now I feel like it is giving yourself a space to connect and love yourself.
Yeah.
Because I really think that just being with yourself, it's like when the moments I was actually teaching in the rehab that I left, and you know after I got sober for a year or two, I went back and did groups, And it's particularly the men that were like, I don't get it. Like, how are you so self like aware and confident? I'm like, and how do you get to a place of recovery? And I said, well, you have to love yourself first. And they were like, how do you do that? And I was like, well, through mindfulness. That's the key. And they were like, huh? So I really think that it's come a long way in terms of like either being awareness or being in the moment, using your breath to really just the key to love. That's what I would say.
That's a beautiful definition.
Yeah, because I talk about breath and like I don't think people understand how important the breath is to the body. So I'm doing a training now. I'm training 8 coaches in the coaching model. And I literally could spend every single weekend just talking about how important the breath is to the body.
When I train therapists, that's an imperative that I emphasize. So vital. I always say to my students, whether they're students, the yoga students, therapy students, holding your breath never makes life easier. And
Right.
we've been programmed to push through, suck it in, hold the breath.
Yeah.
We think that that'll get us through. Yet, anytime we're challenged to hold something in life or move through a challenge in life, it's always best if you meet it with breath. Yet,
Right.
because of unhealed trauma, we can get into this hypervigilant state where it can really minimize our breath capacity. So, how do you work with people who might be a little hesitant to do deep breathing at first because it's a little activating to them or they think it's stupid? What's your preferred method?
Yeah. um, well, I mean, it's part of my motto. So I just do a quick guided meditation, like 5 minutes, just try it on. Just try this, you try it. And I use the word like notice breath as opposed to like do anything with it first. So like be really gentle. And I teach my students we're just going to be aware of it. We're not going to do anything because the second you say like, take a deep breath, your brain is already connected to like, I have to take some action. And now I'm stressed about breathing, which is crazy. So I just spend time just like, let's just be aware and then without judgment. So the second you start to like, all of a sudden now you're noticing your breath and you're like, oh my God, it's in my chest, but it's not in my belly. And like, how come I can't sit tall? And how come she's sitting taller than me, right? It's all of that. So without then removing the judgment. So just really noticing and becoming aware and then loving whatever space that your breath is in. Like there is no like you have to be, or I mean, you can get to deep breathing where you come to a place that it helps your body. But if you're not there, it doesn't mean it's wrong or bad or anything. It just means that's where your body's at. That's totally fine.
Yeah, and I agree and take a similar approach that I think we set people up to fail if we take them into deep breathing first.
Right.
It really has to start with some grounding and breath tracking. Just kind of notice, become friends with the breath, be aware of what's there. And I think if we could gently invite people into that process, then they end up deepening it on their own anyway. I also feel very strongly, and I'm glad you brought that up about when we tell the brain, breathe deep, our brain's already getting into this.
It's already stressed.
It's the same thing when we tell people to relax.
Right.
Yeah, that sets us up for it. It has the opposite effect, and I just think there's other ways we can guide people to that place. So
yeah, that's a good question because not many people like think about that in breath. Like, and I always my friend told me the other day, she's like, no one ever told me what it means when you are a yoga teacher and you're like breathe into this space. I was like, she's like, you broke it down and I actually understood it. I was like, yeah, it's just awareness of that space in your body and really bringing the breath there and just being aware of what that's like in the body. Yeah.
So another question I have for you, I don't think I realized you're a clinical social worker by background. I knew you're a coach, and a lot of people who follow my page and follow my work are therapists who are thinking about moving more into a coaching model. So, or perhaps incorporating both. So can you give us some reflections on what you see the difference to be and what that move was like for you?
Oh my gosh, this is my favorite question, and I may piss some people off, but here's okay. I was finding for a variety of reasons that the clinical model was outdated and ethically, it just didn't allow culturally, particularly to allow community to happen in a way that made sense. So for example, there's so many stipulations on what you can share and what and you can't share and why. And it's not to say like I should dump my stuff on somebody else, but it is to say like I can tell somebody I'm in recovery and work with that. So the coaching model is very, very different in terms of that. I share my stuff right off the bat. I give examples about everything. People know I wrote a book. People are on Facebook. There's not really any, I can set boundaries in a way that is comfortable to me, but also not have to be sort of this robot that I feel like a lot of the clinical settings are set up as. And then there's a power dynamic that gets set up in terms of like, I'm the therapist and you're the client. And no, we're actually members in a process in terms of learning and growing together. And I'm here to help you see your higher self and then get you there. So there's a little difference there of like, and some people don't love it, right? Like they kind of don't like the coaching model. They're like, why did you tell me what to do? And and I don't say that anyone does anything wrong or bad, but I do question why you made that decision. If we're not sure, let's get sure. And how do we get sure? And therapy is very different in terms of like I can listen, but technically, like in the training, you're not supposed to say like tell me what to do. You can suggest and you can solicit. You listen, but the coaching model just gives me a lot more flexibility in terms of like not crossing over these crazy ethical boundaries or losing my license or anything like that. That I can really work with people in sort of a more intense way around certain things. But again, there's people that will come to me and I'm like, you're clinical therapy, you're not coaching right now. Like some people they're really traumatized and they're so heightened that if I start to do some of the coaching stuff, it's going to be too much. Like it's too much for the brain to even take in steps.
Right.
Like they just need to ground and they just need to talk through what's happening, and then they can take some other stuff in, because sometimes the brain is just super overwhelmed that they're not ready for action, which again, totally fine, but yeah, so that's why. And so I do both. I do just therapy, but I still infuse the mindfulness and the movement. So yeah, it's all in there. But it's not action based. It's not like the coaching is definitely like 3 months and that's it. Like there's homework, there's accountability, it's a very different, you sort of have to, it's very action oriented and you're very invested. Not like you're not in therapy, but.
Right. So it sounds like you've created a path for yourself where you can do both. Because I know a lot of people in my community are very interested in perhaps moving in that direction.
Yeah, and then it's different, and it gives you sort of a balance too. It's like you can, with the coaching folks, it takes a lot more planning in terms of like what I'm going to do and where I see them going, and are they meeting their goals. With therapy, it's a little bit more. I can just be sort of with the space with them, and I mean, I'm with the space with both of them, but
Yeah.
the clinical model is a little more. You can take a step back, and I still have them do some homework, but it's not as task oriented.
Got it. So, last thing I wanted to ask you about is, can you tell us about some of the work that you do with social justice and advocacy and that part of your life?
Yeah, well, that's fun. So I've always been interested in that for like my whole life. And yeah, you'll see in the book, I won't tell you too much, but my mom was certainly, very much into that. My dad as well. So I knew about like anti-racism and that kind of language from like, I don't know, I was age 2, cheering for Angela Davis. And, I knew every like political, social person. I knew about Black Panther. I knew Malcolm, I knew everybody. And so I had that history sort of growing up. And so I've always just been in that journey. And then I got into the movement mindfulness stuff. And then of course, the past year and the pandemic and all that stuff, it just brought up, George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery, just the racial justice stuff just came, to light. And I always say like, of course it was there, people of color experience it all the time, but it just, because we have phones, because we have Facebook, because we have all these things, it's on the screen now all the time. So I was like, let's sort of see if we can educate and create some ways to do that. So I created a group called Love and Revolution on Cape Cod, which a lot of people are in that aren't on Cape Cod, which is totally fine. But it's grown. So it's almost like 3,000 people, and there's resources, there's education opportunities, there's discussions, there's really crazy, awesome discussions about anti-racism. And people, I think it's probably one of the places on Facebook that it's hard conversation, but you're not necessarily going to get slammed for saying things. Like I tried to create an environment in which, we have to come together to everyone's going to have different perspectives in different places depending on who they are. And that doesn't even have to do with race necessarily. It has to do, again, you'll understand trauma, right? So there's, if you're even, a white person coming with trauma, you're going to resonate with certain things and be able to understand certain things. And, in depending on where you grew up and all that kind of stuff, and education level and poverty level and all that. So that all comes into play. So, I like to create an environment in which we talk about that stuff from a mindfulness aspect. So really taking a place of like, where are you at the present moment? And then again, not judging yourself for somebody else for that. And then just allowing the conversation to happen. And then loving the conversation. So if somebody says something to offend somebody, everyone doesn't freak out. You're like, there it is. Right. Okay, that's it. And then it's just like, you talk it through and you move on. But that's what we're looking for, is those tough moments that people are afraid to have that you can actually really grow from.
Love it. Yeah. One of my working definitions of mindfulness that I use with my folks is being able to be with whatever's there.
Yeah.
Whether that's a thought, an emotion, a sensation, a difficulty, a conflict, an impasse in the case of group. And can we try to just hold the space for it? I know sometimes that phrase gets overused. Be with it, what it's bringing up for us. Breathe with it, because I think when tension arises, we have that tendency to. But what if we can breathe? And I think sometimes when I have these difficult conversations with people, the key is let's take a breath here for.
We just pause. What's going on?
And then. See how that flows. Well, that is, you were just making some phenomenal differences in the world, and I'm excited we had a chance to chat today. So how can people get in touch with you?
So my website is, the best way is befreewell.com.
Okay.
A single B, FREEWELL. And that there's like a contact page if people want to get in touch with me. It goes right to my email, so people can get in touch. And then I'm all over social media. It's hard not to find me. So I have a personal page, which is Ayanna Parrent, but it's really public, like all my stuff. And then the Be Free Well it also has a page. So it's all connected. You'll find both. And I also have a YouTube channel too.
Great.
I have a podcast.
Tell us about your podcast.
And I have a podcast. So it's called Fit Fat Chat. So I do with my friend Christy, who's a Zumba instructor. I used to be a Zumba instructor, and I got too stuck in trying to like choreograph stuff, so I was like over it. But she's really good at it. And so we were just thinking about a way to create a space in which to talk about body image and body shaming and body positivity and how to create those places in spaces that, because all bodies belong everywhere, especially in movement places. So we talk about yoga, we talk about dancing, we talk about mindfulness, and a lot of race and cultural stuff and how that transcends that space as well, because a lot of people of color have larger bodies, and it is what it is, and it's beautiful. And like, where did the notion ever come from? Now I'm going on a tangent, but where did the notion ever come from? Like, that was bad, but
perfect. Yeah, I'm right there with you. So this sounds like some great discussions to have. Tell us again what the podcast is called.
Fit Fat Chat.
Ooh.
Yeah, so FITPHAT.
I would love to be on at some point.
Oh yeah! I told Christy that we were going to interview you, and she's down.
I have a lot of tangents about all this. I can go on from lived lived experience, but also from my professional thoughts as well. And I'm right there with you about Zumba. This is why my program, Dancing Mindfulness, is non-choreographed.
I couldn't do it anymore. I was like, I can't be bothered with like having my brain trying to remember what's next. This is too stressful.
Yet I also know that some people do really well with choreography and do really well with structure. And my feeling is whatever gets you into the body.
Right. Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Because if I just put music on and dance, so much better. But then like people follow and it's great. So Christy and I like do a class together. It's the Fit Fat Chat class. And so she does like the choreographed part, and I'm like, let's just move. So
For sure. Well, I will put the link to Be Free Well in the
thank you.
notes for this, because yeah, it looks like all of your projects are all interacted here. So that
Yeah,
would be
they're all connected.
a wonderful way for people to access you. So thank you so much for joining me tonight. And again, good luck.
You. Well,
Tell us
so nice to actually see you in person.
I know about the book. So it's called Be Free.
Yeah, it's called Becoming Free.
Coming Free. Yes.
They can also get it on my website, so they just have to go to the it's like merchandise.
Yep. I see it on the website.
Yeah, it'll pop right up. You'll see the book. And it's also on Amazon.
Great. Very good. Well, continued luck and blessings on the release and the progression of the book. And thanks for being here today with us.
Thanks so much.